Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia, berdiri pada 23 Desember 1957. Akuntan muda tanah air mengambil prakarsa pendirian IAI, dipimpin oleh Profesor Sumarjo Citro Sidoyo. IAI didirikan untuk membimbing dan mempertinggi mutu pendidikan akuntansi dan mempertinggi mutu pekerjaan akuntan. Sejak itu, IAI berkembang menjadi organisasi profesi akuntan yang turut mewarnai sejarah perekonomian Indonesia. Inisiasi penting selanjutnya adalah ketika IAI mengambil tanggung jawab menjadi standar setter untuk mendukung pasar modal dan dunia investasi Indonesia. IAI menerbitkan Prinsip Akuntansi Indonesia (PAI) dan Norma Pemeriksaan Akuntan (NPA). PAI nantinya berkembang menjadi Standar Akuntansi Keuangan (SAK). IAI terus tumbuh menjadi pengawal transparansi dan akuntabilitas perekonomian Indonesia. Dalam dinamika global, IAI menjadi pendiri dan anggota IFAC, pendiri dan anggota ASEAN Federation of Accountant (AFA), serta Associate Member Chartered Accountant Worldwide (CAW). Di masa kini, tidak bisa dibantahkan, IAI berperan di hampir semua sektor perekonomian. DPN periode 2022-2026 akan meneruskan estafet kepemimpinan profesi menuju IAI bersatu bersama menciptakan peluang meraih kesuksesan. Melalui rencana strategis IAI periode 2022-2026, IAI tumbuh, kuat, dan berkelanjutan. Rencana strategis IAI terdiri dari 4 pilar. Pilar 1, memperkuat transformasi profesi akuntansi melalui peningkatan kuantitas dan kualitas akuntan Indonesia yang memiliki kompetensi, kredibilitas, serta mematuhi regulasi, kode etik, dan standar profesi. Pilar 2, meningkatkan kepercayaan publik kepada profesi akuntansi sebagai pemimpin dalam pengembangan ekosistem keuangan dan keberlanjutan. Pilar 3, memperkuat perlindungan hukum dan praktik keprofesian akuntan di berbagai sektor di era keberlanjutan. Pilar 4, meningkatkan tata kelola organisasi IAI dan memperluas kerjasama dengan pemangku kepentingan profesi akuntansi. IAI siap mengawal perekonomian Indonesia menuju Sustainable Development Goals. IAI tumbuh, kuat, dan berkelanjutan.
Selamat datang di aplikasi IAI Lounge. Melalui aplikasi ini, Anda dapat mendaftarkan diri Anda untuk mengikuti berbagai kegiatan training, membaca SAK online, dan juga memonitor kegiatan PPL yang pernah Anda ikuti. Download aplikasi IAI Lounge di App Store atau Google Play Store. Untuk anggota IAI, silakan login menggunakan email @akuntanindonesia. Sedangkan untuk non-anggota, login menggunakan alamat email yang telah Anda daftarkan sebelumnya. Pada halaman home, terdapat berbagai menu untuk dapat dinikmati. Cek section lounge untuk melihat event IAI, SAK online, CAW Network, dan affiliated campus. Untuk cek jadwal pelatihan dan event terkini, klik menu event. Scroll untuk melihat berbagai kegiatan dan event yang dilaksanakan oleh IAI, seperti seminar, pelatihan, serta workshop. Apabila Anda telah melakukan proses pendaftaran dan telah menyelesaikan proses administrasi, silakan cek list event yang akan Anda ikuti pada menu My Event. Selanjutnya, Anda dapat membaca SAK secara online. Klik menu SAK online untuk langsung terhubung dengan aplikasi SAK online. Gratis untuk anggota IAI. Untuk non-anggota, silahkan mendaftar untuk berlangganan. Pada menu Home, terdapat juga section keanggotaan untuk mencari informasi terkini tentang keanggotaan IAI dan ASEAN CPA. Nikmati kemudahan mengakses data akuntan profesional pemegang CA, ASEAN CPA, dan akuntan berpraktik. Selanjutnya, pada section KJA, terdapat menu Find KJA untuk mencari kantor jasa akuntan terdekat di sekitar Anda. Terdapat juga menu materi KJA untuk memperkaya pengetahuan dan kompetensi Anda. Section KJA akan memudahkan Anda untuk mendapatkan informasi lengkap dan terkini seputar kantor jasa akuntan. Terakhir, tepatnya di bagian bawah, terdapat menu berita dan publikasi yang akan mengupdate Anda dengan informasi terkini terkait perkembangan profesi akuntansi, baik nasional maupun internasional, dan pastinya mengenai SAK Update. Selamat menikmati aplikasi IAI Lounge, available on App Store and Google Play Store. Journey to be a professional accountant is just one click away.
Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia berdiri pada 23 Desember 1957. Akuntan muda tanah air mengambil prakarsa pendirian IAI, dipimpin oleh Profesor Sumarjo Citro Sidoyo. IAI didirikan untuk membimbing dan mempertinggi mutu pendidikan akuntansi dan mempertinggi mutu pekerjaan akuntan. Sejak itu, IAI berkembang menjadi organisasi profesi akuntan yang turut mewarnai sejarah perekonomian Indonesia. Inisiasi penting selanjutnya adalah ketika IAI mengambil tanggung jawab menjadi standar setter untuk mendukung pasar modal dan dunia investasi Indonesia. IAI menerbitkan prinsip akuntansi Indonesia (PAI) dan norma pemeriksaan akuntan NPA. PAI nantinya berkembang menjadi standar akuntansi keuangan (SAK). IAI terus tumbuh menjadi pengawal transparansi dan akuntabilitas perekonomian Indonesia. Dalam dinamika global, IAI menjadi pendiri dan anggota IFAC, pendiri dan anggota ASEAN Federation of Accountant (AFA), serta Associate Member Chartered Accountant Worldwide (CAW). Di masa kini, tidak bisa dibantahkan, IAI berperan di hampir semua sektor perekonomian. DPN periode 2022-2026 akan meneruskan estafet kepemimpinan profesi menuju IAI bersatu bersama menciptakan peluang meraih kesuksesan. Melalui rencana strategis IAI periode 2022-2026, IAI tumbuh, kuat, dan berkelanjutan. Rencana strategis IAI terdiri dari 4 pilar. Pilar 1, memperkuat transformasi profesi akuntansi melalui peningkatan kuantitas dan kualitas akuntan Indonesia yang memiliki kompetensi, kredibilitas, serta mematuhi regulasi, kode etik, dan standar profesi. Pilar 2, meningkatkan kepercayaan publik kepada profesi akuntansi sebagai pemimpin dalam pengembangan ekosistem keuangan dan keberlanjutan. Pilar 3, memperkuat perlindungan hukum dan praktik keprofesian akuntan di berbagai sektor di era keberlanjutan. Pilar 4, meningkatkan tata kelola organisasi IAI dan memperluas kerjasama dengan pemangku kepentingan profesi akuntansi. IAI siap mengawal perekonomian Indonesia menuju Sustainable Development Goals. IAI tumbuh, kuat, dan berkelanjutan.
Hai, kamu nggak ngerti pajak? Mau belajar pajak yang fun dan isinya daging semua? Sini ikut aku. IAI punya pelatihannya. Jadi, nanti di kelas kalian akan diajarin berbagai hal mengenai pajak. Dari yang basic sampai yang kompleks. Para pengajarnya juga keren-keren banget kok. Mereka adalah praktisi dan konsultan pajak yang berkompeten. Terus, pilihan kelasnya juga banyak banget. Selain menyelenggarakan kelas tatap muka di IAI Knowledge Center, IAI juga menyelenggarakan kelas brevet secara online. Jadi, kalian bisa menyesuaikan kelas mana yang cocok dengan agenda kalian. Untuk menjamin modul yang selalu relevan, IAI memiliki MOU dan kerjasama dengan DJP. Sehingga kalian nggak perlu khawatir. Udah pasti, modul brevet IAI selalu update dengan undang-undang dan peraturan yang berlaku saat ini. IAI juga sudah meluluskan ribuan alumni brevet dari IAI Knowledge Center di seluruh Indonesia. Dulu, ngitung pajak tuh rasanya susah banget. Bersyukur ketemu pelatihan pajak yang keren kayak di IAI. Jadi, jangan biarkan masalah pajak menghambat bisnis kalian. Tunggu apa lagi? Buruan ikut pelatihan brevet IAI. Untuk daftar dan informasi selanjutnya, klik link berikut ya. Yuk buruan kita daftar.
Join Basic Financial Accounting Course IAI yuk. Smart in Accounting, only IAI. Penyusunan laporan keuangan harus mengacu pada standar akuntansi keuangan yang berlaku. Melalui pelatihan ini, peserta akan mendapatkan modul dan materi akuntansi keuangan komprehensif sesuai dengan standar akuntansi keuangan yang berlaku. Materi juga dilengkapi dengan soal latihan dan contoh kasus pada setiap topik pembahasan. Narasumber BFA Course IAI tentu saja merupakan akuntan profesional yang selalu terjaga kompetensinya. Pastinya dengan segala professional experience yang tidak diragukan lagi. Selain pilihan kelas yang ditawarkan beragam, BFA Course IAI juga diselenggarakan secara tatap muka maupun virtual. Dengan penyelenggaraan kelas secara virtual, pelatihan dapat diikuti oleh peserta dari seluruh Indonesia. Bahkan ada peserta yang berdomisili di luar negeri, sehingga sharing knowledge antar peserta akan semakin kaya. Pelatihan yang dilaksanakan sebanyak 45 sesi atau 25 kali pertemuan tentu saja membahas materi yang sangat komprehensif, mulai dari dasar-dasar akuntansi, penyusunan laporan keuangan, sampai dengan dasar analisis keuangan. Ingin tahu lebih banyak tentang akuntansi? Segera daftarkan diri Anda dalam Basic Financial Accounting Course IAI. IAI Knowledge Center hadir di Geraha Akuntan Menteng, IAI Knowledge Center Fatmawati, IAI Knowledge Center Moy, IAI Knowledge Center Sumarekon, Bekasi. Smart in Accounting, only IAI.
What kind of tomorrow do you want to shape? A connected world, working together to prosper and thrive. Training as a chartered accountant puts you in a position to make a real difference, giving you the skills and perspectives to build the tomorrow you want. Become a difference maker. Become a chartered accountant.
Mengabdi bersatu dan berbakti untuk ibu pertiwi, selalu berkarya dan jaga integritas Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia. Gerakmu, hadirkan semangatmu, hatimu dan mimpimu, satukanlah dalam asa. masa depan, jaga akuntabilitas. IAI mengabdi, bersatu dan berbakti untuk Ibu Pertiwi. Selalu berkarya dan jaga integritas. Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia. Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the APAFest 2023 webinar series. Before we start this webinar, I would like to greet IAI Executive Director, Ibu Elizarni Husin, our speaker today, Umasudan Subramaniam, ACMA CGMA, Stephen Gunawan, Manager Sustainable Finance CDP, Pera Yulianingsih, Junior Manager Standards and Professional Practices IAI, our moderator, winner of National APA Award 2022 from Hasanuddin University, Samintang, APAFest 2023 participant, accounting students and professional. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Monica Nabilia, and it is a very great pleasure for me to host the session. Ladies and gentlemen, IAI APAFest is the largest and most prestigious annual festival for IAI students member and outstanding accounting students in Indonesia. It is a festival of creativity that brings together the best future professional accountants candidates with representatives of leading companies in Indonesia. With the theme of redefining talent, skill, and competencies, APAFest 2023 looks to continue the festival success of bringing together different platforms for aspiring accountants in Indonesia, including APAChamp, Business Competition, National APA Award, the Best Student Competition, Real Competition, and Webinar Series. APAFest 2023 has officially begun in July 2023 and will culminate in a collaboration with annual international activities for young accountants, namely FinBiz 2030, organized by One Young World and Chartered Accountant Worldwide on November 10, 2023, with the theme of our webinar is AI Unleash Navigating Future of Finance and Accounting. This will also coincide with commemoration of International Accounting Day. IAI APAFest 2023 is fully supported by ASEAN Federation of Accountants. More about APAFest 2023 you can find at our website www.apafest.iiglobal.or.id. Ladies and gentlemen, our session today is Sustainability Disclosure 101, an in-depth analysis and practical usage. The accountancy profession is playing a critical role in enabling sustainability. Our second webinar will discuss on how companies can effectively communicate their commitment to a more sustainable future while reaping the benefit of improved brand reputation, investor confidence, and risk management. Ladies and gentlemen, join us in the journey for accountants to rescue. Before we start this webinar, I would like to invite our speakers and moderator to join a group picture. So I would like to invite Mbak Pera, Pak Stephen, and Suban to open your camera. Also Samintang. Okay, now on my three, ladies and gentlemen. 1, 2, and 3. Another one. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Thank you. Before we start, let me read you the house of rules that apply during the webinar. So microphone is on mute. Your video could be on. The whole event is being recorded by IAI. You may use the chat function to communicate with other participants or with our speakers. To speak during the webinar, you may choose to use the raise hand function. The material and the recorded of this webinar will be published on IAI website, also IAI YouTube. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here with us today, we have prominent speakers who will share more about sustainability. Thus, I will invite you to be an active participant during the session. All participants who join us via Zoom or YouTube will be entitled to have 2 CPDE certificates. Ladies and gentlemen, our moderator today, Samintang, she's the first winner of National APA Award 2022. She is an accounting student from Hasanuddin University. Samintang is an inspiring professional accountant who has remarkable achievement as accounting students. Accounting profession in Indonesia is proud to have Samintang as our future leader. Ladies and gentlemen, I will hand over the session to Samintang. Samintang, over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Miss Monica, for the kind and hospitable reception to our webinar today. And to begin this session, I extend my warm greeting to the Chartered Institute of Management Accountant, or CIMA, Carbon Disclosure Project, CDP, the Institute of Indonesia Chartered Accountant, as well as all the estimate members, Executive Director of IAI, and all participants and attendees present today. And it has been such an honor for me and a privilege for me to be here as Samintang, or you can call me Sam. And I will be a moderator for today's session within title of Sustainability Disclosure 101, an in-depth analysis and practical usage. But first of all, I would like to greetings and introduce our 3 speakers today. The first one is Mr. Umasudan Subramaniam, ACMA, CGMA. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Samantha.
All right. So Mr. Sudan currently holds the position as Deputy Chief Financial Officer at the Australian Military Bank and served as the Chief Executive Officer at Universal MindMapper. And additionally, he is a CFA charter holder, a certified FRM, a fully qualified CPA in Australia, and also member of Association of Charter Certified Accountant and associate member of CIMA in the UK. So he's have a lot of experience in the field of sustainability accounting as well. And the second speaker today is Mr. Stephen Gunawan. How are you today, Mr. Stephen?
Hi, nice to meet everyone.
All right. So Mr. Stephen served as the manager of sustainable finance at CDP, and he specialized in assisting financial institutions across Southeast Asia, especially in Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, and Vietnam. And throughout his career, he has accumulated a diverse range of work experiences, including a role as a consultant, project manager, and a member of the board of commissioner as well. And the third one is Ms. Vera Yulianingsi. How are you today, Ms. Vera?
I'm great, thank you.
All right. So Ms. Vera holds the position as Junior Manager of Standard and Professional Practices as the Institute of Indonesia Chartered Accountant. And her involvement in financial accounting standard setting in Indonesia began in 2020. It's a pandemic era, right? So she plays a pivotal role in providing projects to support Indonesian Financial Accounting Standard Boards, or DSAK-IAI, and also the Task Force Comprehensive Corporate Reporting, or TFCCR EIE. And notably, her current focus center on the drafting of IFRS Sustainability Disclosure Standard. So it's a wonderful today to hear that all the speakers are doing well and ready to share their valuable insight with everyone today. So this webinar today is also in line with the program from Institute of Indonesia Chartered Accountant, or we call it APAFES 2023, with a theme redefining talent, skill, and competencies in collaboration with IFAC to empower chartered accountant to be a difference maker. And so don't forget, for all the participants, especially from accounting students from all over Indonesia, to enroll APAFES 2023. So it's my privilege to introduce the first speaker today, Mr. Umasudan Subramaniam, ECMA, CGMA, to delivering this presentation, and he will provide insight into the definition of sustainability disclosure and its significance in today's business environment. And he will offer a concise overview also about IFRS S1 and discuss the accountant role in this context. So the screen is yours, Mr. Sudan.
Thank you so much, Samintha, for the great introduction, and good evening, everyone. I hope all of you are doing well. And I have just started sharing this slides. So if you guys can confirm that you are able to see my slides, so you can get started with my presentation. So is it all good? Okay, fantastic. So, okay, so in my today's presentation on sustainability disclosures, I'm trying to answer three questions. The first question that I'm trying to answer is, what is the relevance of the sustainability disclosures in today's changing business landscape? That is number one. And number two, I'm also going to speak about some brief introduction on IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 disclosure standards. And towards the end, the third question that I'm trying to answer is, what are the skills and expertise needed from an accountant and the accounting profession as a whole to deliver the sustainability disclosures in an effective manner? So let's get started with an introduction to sustainability disclosures. As we all understand, sustainability disclosures are voluntary disclosures published by an organization and wide range of organizations to communicate their strategy, aspirations, and progress towards achieving their sustainability-related goals. We can summarize the sustainability into three common factors, which we call ESG. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance factors, which is kind of the foundation for any kind of sustainability disclosures. And the objective of sustainability disclosures is to communicate with the general users of financial statements, such as shareholders, potential investors, general public, and various other kind of users. There is evidence that there is a link between the long-term performance of an organization and sustainable business practices, which means that if an organization adopts sustainable business practices and becomes a good corporate citizen, it is going to outperform the rest of the competitors in the long term. So there is a clear linkage between sustainable business practices, sustainability disclosures, as well as long-term performance of organizations. If we really look at in today's business landscape, how relevant sustainability and sustainability disclosures. If you go back 10 years ago, companies were focusing on sustainability disclosures because customers, they wanted to buy products from companies who are providing, I think there is a static noise coming up. So, okay, I think it's fine now. So if you look at 10 years back, organizations were focusing on sustainable business practices and sustainability disclosures because customers around the world were becoming increasingly interested on buying products from companies who are good corporate citizens. Employees who are willing to work only in companies who take sustainability very seriously. On the other hand, investors would also want to invest their money into companies who are good corporate citizens. So that was the case 10 years ago, but now things have changed where organizations need to have sustainability integrated into their business model in order to gain a competitive advantage in the market. We are also looking at the ESG investments have been rising in popularity around the globe, which means when you say ESG investments, so there are investors and there are specific funds and mutual funds who focus on investing client money only on companies who are ESG positive, meaning the companies who contribute to the environment and society positively. And there are some investors and some funds exclusively avoid ESG negative stocks, which means companies who pollute the environment or who are simply not so great at sustainability disclosures. Investors and funds would want to avoid them in their investing. And there is also increasing regulatory pressure on sustainable business practices as well as sustainability disclosures. And then we also understand that general public are becoming more and more aware of sustainability, and it is important to develop a sustainable generation. So which means companies really cannot get away from that. So now, before we go into IFRS S1 and S2, we are also going to look at what are the general issues and shortcomings in sustainability disclosures. The first thing is sustainability disclosures, that it is not standardized, and now it is not standardized. And so when you say it is not standardized and it is voluntary, so then what happens? Companies only try to say the good story and try to hide the bad side of them. So in what we call greenwashing, so greenwashing has been a significant problem in sustainability disclosures. And then moving on to the next thing is the commitment from the board's senior management to integrate sustainability into their business practices and also to invest on sustainability disclosures. And then data is always an issue. So we have insufficient data and expertise to meet the evolving needs of sustainability disclosures. And then moving on to the next slide, if you really want to comply with sustainability disclosures, organizations need to invest on technology, invest on people, and establish control procedures and develop a reporting infrastructure, right? Which might be complex than the general corporate reporting requirements. That is very important. And then again, as I said earlier, the problem is lack of high quality data and subjective nature of the issues. And the subjectivity in interpreting the sustainability disclosures are also an issue. So different organizations report using different approaches, which is very difficult for the users to compare and contrast to analyze organizations from a sustainability perspective. So these are kind of some of the common issues that we face with regards to sustainability disclosures. And now moving on to an interesting development where we are going to specifically discuss about IFRS S1 and S2. Thanks to International Sustainability Standard Board, which comes under IFRS Foundation, who issued the International Sustainability Standards, IFRS S1 and S2 in June 2023. So we are discussing a standard which is just a couple of months old at this point in time. So we are focusing on two main standards. If you look at it, number one, IFRS S1, which focuses on general requirements for disclosure of sustainability related financial information. And the second standard is IFRS S2, which focuses on climate-related disclosures. So it's picking up one specific or probably the burning issue in sustainability, which is the climate risk. So IFRS S2 focuses on climate-related disclosures. So the introduction of these accounting standards for the very first time in the sustainability space is definitely expected to improve the trust and confidence on companies' disclosure, so that now there is a set of standards which companies need to use. As I pointed out earlier, one of the key issues in sustainability disclosures is the lack of standardization. So with IFRS S1, S2 coming into effect, it is going to improve the standardization, which is going to be good from a user perspective, so that users can compare the sustainability disclosures of one organization with another when making economic decisions. So in terms of the standard implementation, you can say the standards are coming into effect on 1st January 2024, but early adoption is permitted, but there is no partial compliance of IFRS S1 and you implement IFRS S2 later. If you are doing it together, which means you are implementing IFRS S1 and S2 together, you can implement them well before 1st January 2024. As the standard setters say, early adoption is permitted. But keep in mind, these standards are not mandatory. It's not like IFRS. It is IFRS S1 and S2 are mandatory, but I actually believe that most of the regulatory bodies and governments around the globe, time to come, they will make these standards compulsory for the organizations listed or registered in their jurisdictions. I think that I encourage all the regulators and governments to do that, because as the IFRS Foundation or the International Sustainability Standard Board cannot really insist or force people to use IFRS S1 and S2. So it is a role really of local accounting bodies to lobby the regulators and various government bodies to make these standards mandatory for organizations, which can really facilitate standardization of sustainability disclosures. Moving on to IFRS S1, and I'm not going to really go into details, but I'm going to give you a brief understanding about what can you expect in IFRS S1. So IFRS S1 says an organization needs to disclose information about all sustainability related risks and opportunities that could reasonably be expected to affect an entity's prospects. So you need to analyze and identify what are the key sustainability opportunities and risks that you face, and disclose all of them as part of your sustainability disclosures. And also remember that this information is useful for general purpose financial reports where IFRS is being used. Also remember that the materiality concept also apply when it comes to sustainability disclosures, which means any information which is material enough to have an impact on a user's decision making related to sustainability, that information needs to be disclosed. And the accounting standard setters have also made it clear that any organizations can implement IFRS S1 and N2, including the organizations who are already IFRS compliant and also organizations who are adopting US GAAP. So moving on to the next slide, also remember that, the financial statements are prepared, let's say, for a specific period, and the sustainability disclosures need to also be consistent with the reporting period of the organization. In simple terms, if your reporting period is from 1st January to 31st of December, your sustainability disclosures should also be consistent with your reporting period. And also remember that you need to disclose comparative information for sustainability disclosures. Just like how do you disclose comparative information for your income statement, your balance sheet, your cash flow statements, similar to that, you also need to have sustainability disclosures on a comparative basis. And you also need to correct any material prior period errors by going into that particular year's sustainability reports. And in terms of currency, your reporting currency for sustainability reporting, remember, should be your presentation currency. So that is, what is the presentation currency as per International Accounting Standards 21, I guess. So if you decide your presentation currency is US dollars, then your sustainability report should also be in US dollars as well. So that's another thing coming up. I think this particular slide is very interesting, where IFRS S1 is summarized in a nutshell. There are 4 things organizations need to prepare themselves on. Number 1 is governance, strategy, risk management, metrics, and targets. So let's talk about each of them in a bit more detail. So when you say governance, so what is the governance around the processes, controls, and procedures that an organization is following to monitor and control sustainability related risks and opportunities? So do you have separate committees in your organizations who's overseeing the entire governance process on your sustainability, identifying, monitoring, and reporting your sustainability related risks and opportunities? Number 2, strategy. So what is the approach an organization is following to manage your sustainability related risks and opportunities? What kind of strategy the company is following? Are they taking sustainability seriously? What kind of importance are they doing? And are they placing their sustainability strategy in line with their business strategy? How integrated are they? So that's something that they need to communicate as part of their sustainability reporting. The third one is very important, risk management. This is a process where an organization identifies, evaluates, and prioritize and monitor your sustainability related risks and opportunities. So it is really the risk management teams of organizations need to take sustainability as a separate theme for them to monitor as part of their enterprise risk management guidelines. The last thing I think which is very important from a disclosure perspective, I guess, organizations need to come up with sustainability targets. For example, what kind of emission levels that you are targeting, or what kind of gender diversity in your organization that you are targeting, or what kind of contribution to the society that you want to do. So it could be anything. It could be environment related, it could be society related, or it could be human resources related. It could be anything, but organizations need to come up with metrics and targets for each of the areas under sustainability, which can be environmental factors, governance factors, and social factors. So it is all about communicating those targets to the users so that users will be able to analyze how far the organization is from achieving those targets when it comes to ESG reporting, right? ESG reporting is, I can give you a good example. In Australia, ESG reporting is increasing in popularity. Organizations are spending a lot of money and resources into this particular space because this is going to be the reporting challenge going into the future for organizations. So now I'm moving on to IFRS 2, which focuses on climate-related disclosures. If you look at slide 12, again, organization needs to be clear on their governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics and targets specifically related to climate-related disclosures. A good example is emission levels. Right, so this is a good slide, slide 13. It gives you examples of some disclosures that you might expect to see as part of IFRS S2. So these are cross-industry metric categories, which means it is relevant for any given industry, but there are also specific metrics which needs to be identified by organizations in specific industries and sectors. So greenhouse gas emissions, climate-related transition risks. The transition risks are really about, there are two types of risks in sustainability, or more specifically for climate risk. Number one is the physical risk, which is the real climate risk. And then number two is the transition risk, which means when an organization or when a society trying to address sustainability issue, you are moving towards your targets or moving towards reducing your sustainability risks, what challenges are you going to face? That is what we say transition risks. So climate-related transition risks, climate-related physical risks, climate-related opportunities. What opportunities are available for organizations to improve on the climate metrics and targets? And then this is important, capital deployment, how much money an organization is setting aside, how much resources are being invested on climate-related risks and opportunities. So this is an important disclosure so that a user would be able to assess how seriously an organization is treating sustainability and climate disclosures. And then internal carbon prices, and most importantly, how climate-related considerations are factored into the executive remuneration. This is important. If you really want to bring in some change in sustainability reporting, it is very important that organizations need to change their performance culture or their rewards culture to reward sustainable practices or good practices when it comes to climate disclosures and sustainability. The targets can be set by the organization, so sometimes regulators can come up with targets on the climate risks or any other general sustainability risks. So it can be enacted by various regulators, or in the absence of all of them, organizations on a voluntary basis can come up with their own targets for specific KPIs on the climate risks as well as the wider sustainability risk. So I'm trying to answer the third question now, which is going to be the last thing in my presentation. What do we have to do as accountants in order to help organizations to remain compliant with IFRS S1 and S2, and also help the senior management team in the organization to do sustainable business practices and also report them in a clear manner? Number one, accountants need to develop understanding and awareness of sustainability related issues. What are the emerging things? So what does IFRS S1 say? What does IFRS S2 say? When it is coming into effect, how important are they? So accountant needs to develop their skill set around this specific area. And then accountants also need to understand not just the IFRS S1 and S2, you need to also understand the regulatory and voluntary and legal reporting relating to sustainability, and more specifically, environment and climate related risks. So, and then the third thing is you need to develop frameworks within your organization to collect, measure, and analyze the information for sustainability reporting, because at the end of the day, if you feed in wrong data into your system is going to throw up wrong output. Is always like what goes in, what comes out, isn't it? So at the end of the day, you need to really make sure that the data cleanup and developing a framework for that is an important role of accountants. And then offer the advisory support on risk management and risk reporting on sustainability issues, because for various things, I think finance professionals need to work hand in hand with risk management function of organizations. When it comes to sustainability, that is no exception. Again, sustainability risk and the disclosures, I would definitely think is a joint role in an organization between the risk management function and the finance function, where there is a lot of coordination and cooperation is needed within these cross-functional teams in organizations to deliver sustainability disclosures to the society. And then accountants also need to help the management to draft organizational policies and procedures to report any sustainability issues. So that's again another thing in terms of policy development, that's very important. And then also you need to make sure that the sustainability report that you are providing is clear, useful, reliable, comparable from one year to another, and comparable between other organizations within the industry, and also is useful for decision-making purposes. So, and I hope the accounting profession and accounting professionals can evolve into something bigger so that we can contribute to sustainability disclosures, which in turn help to develop sustainable societies and generations. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Sudan, for your remarkable presentation. It's such an insightful presentation for all of us, especially accounting student. And if I can sum up your presentation today, I will highlight 3 key points. The first one is there is a multiplier effect between the sustainability disclosure to the long-term performance, especially for business sector. But at the same time, there are several challenges that we face, especially lack of commitment from business and also greenwashing and lack of data as well. And the second one is IFRS S1 and S2 is such a good news for everyone today, especially for business sector, to have an up-to-date and comprehensive standard to measure their sustainability and also related to the climate change issue. And the last one is accountant has a significant role to elaborate and also to implement the sustainability disclosure, because we need to develop awareness according to the sustainability related issue. And then also we need to understand the regulation and make sure that all the reporting is clear, useful, and also reliable for decision making. So thank you so much, Mr. Sudan, for your presentation today. And we need to process into the next session. But before we are going to the next session, I will kindly remind all the participants to feel free to ask any question by using our Q&A chat box on Zoom and also on the YouTube channel. And at the end of our session, we will select several questions for discussion. So the next session will be presented by Mr. Stephen Gunawan as a manager of sustainable finance at the Carbon Disclosure Project. And he will share about CDP's activities and also current state of sustainability disclosure practices, and also relate correlation between the climate disclosure standard into the ISSB. So the screen is yours, Mr. Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Sam, for the introduction. So for today's presentation, I will take you through introduction to CDP and what we do with regards to environmental disclosure. And next, I will move on to the benefits of disclosure. And lastly, I'll talk a little bit about CDP's relation to ISSB standards. I do realize that I think I have quite a number of slides just on what CDP does, but I think it's useful for all of you to know the history and the background of environmental disclosure, because CDP, we are actually the pioneers of environmental disclosure back in the year 2000. So without much let's move on to the next slide, please. Next slide. So yeah, so CDP, as I mentioned, we are an environmental nonprofit, and we were founded in the year 2000 in London. So our core business is on environmental data, and we believe that data is key to drive action, right? So if you look at our logo there, there's disclosure, insight, and action, right? So from data, companies can get insights on their environmental impact, and with these insights, we hope that companies can take action to reduce that impact. So as I mentioned earlier, we were the pioneers in environmental reporting back in the year 2000. We were founded in London, and the world looks to us as the gold standard, because we have the richest and most comprehensive data set with regards to the environment, and we've been doing this for 23 years now. So our main objective is to make environmental reporting mainstream, right? So I'm sure all of you know what is financial reporting, and I think our core objective is to make environmental reporting as mainstream as financial reporting. Next slide, please. So before I explain how CDP works, let me take you back to when Britney Spears was still in the billboards in the year 2000. So, our founders, 3 of them, they were sitting in a London cafe, and they were thinking to themselves, what has the greatest impact on the environment, right? And it's not individuals like us, but, it's actually companies, and large companies who, make the products that we use, who, actually, move the economy. And if you take it, and if you take it a step back, they were thinking like, who actually wields influence on these large companies, right? And if you talk about the capital markets, as I'm sure you all understand because you are accountants, investors or global investors actually wield influence on listed companies, on these large companies worldwide, right? So if I go back to the slide here, you can see, there's investors on the left side of the slide, and CDP, we work with global investors worldwide. So the largest like BlackRock and Vanguard, and through CDP, they request environmental data to all listed companies worldwide, right? And why do they want to do so? Because they need data for to make the portfolio, right? They need to know which companies in their portfolio are doing good or not doing so good with regards to the environment. And maybe to give like a real example, if you're an asset manager like BlackRock and you are making a mutual fund that is environmental, where it is ESG based, you need to be able to sort out which companies in that portfolio are the brown and which are the green. So that's where CDP comes in, right? By providing a platform for listed companies to disclose their environmental data, we became that bridge to provide data, environmental data, from companies to investors. So likewise, you can see there's another requesting authority. We call them purchasing organizations. So the simple way to call them are they are large purchasers like Walmart, who have suppliers spread all around the world, right? And back then in the year 2000, there wasn't much regulations, if any, on disclosures, on sustainability disclosures. And CDP, by collecting environmental data from all their suppliers worldwide, are able to provide this data in a comprehensive and comparable way to these large purchasing organizations. So with this data, then they can select which vendors that they want to choose, which suppliers that are greener than others, and which ones are performing better. And last but not least, we also work with large central governments to collect data from local or regional governments. So much in the same way that the other two requesting authorities work. We provide the bridge to collect data from local governments to central governments. So the last one on that list in the middle is private markets. So if I've been telling you about listed companies just now, we realized that we don't want the private companies to fall through the cracks, right? So as of recently, CDP has been working on a questionnaire for the private markets as well, so that they also, like listed companies, can disclose their environmental data. And a part of a subset of these private markets is obviously small and medium enterprises, and I think it's especially relevant in emerging economies like Indonesia and in Southeast Asia, that we have a questionnaire to capture this sort of environmental information. So if I take you quickly to the right-hand side of the slide, you can see that there are three different logos: climate change, water security, and forest. So basically, we collect we use three types of questionnaires to collect data from these companies. So the first being climate change, and this revolves mainly around emissions and carbon. And the second, water security, which deals with like water contamination and freshwater usage. And last but not least, of course, on forests, which covers mainly on deforestation and policies with regards to forests. So if you look at the top of that, those three logos, you can see there's a TCFD logo there. So if you're all aware about ISSB, the ISSB actually wasn't the first standard on sustainability disclosures. So before the ISSB, there was a number of standards, and one of them being TCFD, which is the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. So they were founded in the year 2017 by the Financial Stability Board. And their main objective was to link climate risk to financial risk, right? And so they have 4 pillars, which is governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics and targets. So this will not sound unfamiliar to all of you, because as Sudan has showed in his slide earlier, these are actually the 4 pillars that ISSB uses in their S1 and S2. So, we are proud to say that CDP have been aligned with TCFD since 2018. And, by disclosing to CDP, companies actually are aligning with the best practice, we believe, in environmental disclosure. So CDP will also be aligning with ISSB's, with IFRS S2, with the climate disclosure standards in 2024, because, we believe that the world needs a global baseline standard to be able to disclose their environmental data. And we think that by adopting these standards in our questionnaire, we are accelerating the adoption of ISSB worldwide, because we do have 18,000 companies disclosing to us globally in 2022. So besides ISSB, there are actually a number of standards that we will be aligning to as well. One of them being TNFD. So TNFD, by its name, is a task force on nature-related financial disclosures, and it's kind of similar to the TCFD, but it primarily deals with nature, such as deforestation, for example. And this will be aligning with also in 2024 in our questionnaires. Next slide, please. So this is a bit of an explanation on the 3 different types of questionnaires that we provide to companies. We ask companies to disclose on a specific questionnaire that they have an impact on, right? So, for example, if you are, a timber company, obviously we will ask you to disclose under forest questionnaire. And if you are, say, a textile company with heavy usage on fresh water and potential contamination as well, we will ask you to disclose under the water security questionnaire, right? So our questionnaires are tailored, right, to each company. So, because every company has a different sort of environmental impact, and our questionnaires capture the whole spectrum of environmental impact from companies. So as you can see from the slides, I'm not going to go one by one, but each questionnaire deals with questions that are specific to their area. And if you look at forests, we have 4 main forest risk commodities. It's timber, cattle, palm oil, and soy, because these 4 commodities we believe to be heavily contributing to deforestation worldwide. And companies in the agri sector, for example, they need to fill in a forest questionnaire. Next slide, please. So this is a highlight of our performance in 2022. We had 18,700 companies disclosing in over 90 countries. So if you think about it, that is 50% of the total market capitalization. And besides that, we also have 1,100 cities, states, and regions also disclosing their environmental impact. And we have more than 280 large purchasing companies like Walmart asking their supply chains to disclose their data through CDP, right? And last but not least, we have more than 740 investors who request information from companies that are in their portfolios, listed companies worldwide. Next slide, please. So this is what we believe to for a company to be their journey to environmental stewardship. So if we start from the most left there, we believe that all companies should start disclosing through CDP. So we don't want to let perfect be the enemy of the good, so they say, right? Because we believe that our questionnaire can also be a learning tool, or you can call it like an X-ray machine to find where your risks and opportunities with regards to the environment lie. And once companies start disclosing via CDP, ideally we want with regards to climate change, ideally we want them to start calculating and reporting their emissions. And 2 of the best practices that we believe in the market today is the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, and also the PCAF standards, which is specifically aimed for financial institutions to calculate their finance emissions. So after doing some calculating on and reporting on emissions, we want companies to start setting a target, right? So because there's no point in disclosing and reporting emissions if you don't set a target to reduce them. So we want companies to start setting an emissions reduction target, and along the way, with regards to emissions reduction, we want companies to start purchasing renewable electricity, because Scope 2 is it's a major part of most companies' emissions profiles. And last but not least, we want companies to set and monitor their progress using the science-based targets, right? So CDP, we are a founding partner of the science-based targets, and we believe that is the gold standard for companies to set climate-related targets to net zero. Next slide, please. So, like I said, we've been operating since the year 2000. And our data actually powers the whole ESG ecosystem, right? So the names here will not be unfamiliar to you. Names like Goldman Sachs, MSCI, so we can say that we are primary data collectors. So we go out and we actually survey companies to get their responses. And a lot of these ESG data providers in the market actually do license and purchase the raw data from us, right? So I think one interesting fact that is not listed here is that recently the US federal government, so they're the largest buyer in the world globally, they require all their major contractors to disclose climate-related data through CDP, right? So that is how much faith the US government actually has in us. And as I mentioned earlier, we are also part of various initiatives worldwide, and you can see like Climate Action 100 and science-based targets there at the bottom right. Next slide, please. So this slide shows you, the number of disclosures by companies in Asia Pacific. So just Asia Pacific, and you can see there that Japan and China, they dominate the disclosures in this region. And we can see that Southeast Asia in general, that we are lagging behind these two countries. But it is quite understandable because China is the production center of the world, and they have lots of suppliers based in China, and maybe that's a part of the reason why the numbers in China is so amazing. But if you look at the growth, I think we can be hopeful that the growth of disclosure will be increasing year by year, and we've been increasing by more than 100% since from 2020 to 2022. Next slide, please. So this is a very recent report by environmental consulting company ERM. So what they did was they rated all ESG rating companies in the market, and they show that CDP is ranking in the top 2 for usefulness and quality of environmental data, right? So like I said earlier, we are the trusted name with regards to environmental data, and I think 2 key differences stand out between CDP and the other data providers here, right? So we are one of the few primary or active data collectors, right? So we collect the raw data from companies directly through our questionnaires instead of purchasing them from other companies. And secondly is that we are one of the few non-profits that is listed here, right? So obviously, if you think about non-profits, we don't have a conflict of interest, and that increases the credibility of our data. Next slide, please. So besides collecting data and providing the data to large companies, large investors globally, we also provide a score to companies that disclose via CDP. So this is, as you can see from the slide here, there's 4 rungs of the ladder. So it's from disclosure to leadership, right? And disclosure mainly, it's evaluating a company's transparency and seeing, how much data, how much information that they're actually disclosing through our questionnaire. And if we go one level up to awareness, this level basically shows that a company is starting to be aware of their environmental impact, right? And not just purely disclosing this data, right? So one more level up under the management rung, companies that are in this level basically are already managing their environmental impact. So what that means is that they're taking actions to reduce emissions, for example, to increase the governance with regards to deforestation, for example, or to reduce their freshwater usage, for example. And then we go to the last, the top rung of the ladder, under the leadership level. This basically means that companies who are, who get an A or A minus, they have exhibited the best practice in environmental stewardship. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to show you the full, details of our questionnaires because, like I said, we have lots of questionnaires, industry-specific questionnaires, and also thematic, divided by the thematic areas. But since I work in the field of sustainable finance, so I'm going to show you a questionnaire that is, shown to the financial institutions, right? So, as you can see from the questionnaire here, we have a lot of modules, obviously, and within each modules we have a lot of questions. So, I think some of the modules here, the names will not be, strange to you because, it's, as I said, we are aligned to TCFD, we are aligned to the 4 pillars of TCFD. So we can see governance, risk and opportunities, strategy, and also the different metrics and targets that are inside each module as well. And I think the thing to note in this specific questionnaire is C14, which is portfolio impact, and also FWFS on the right there, which is forest and water security. So as I mentioned earlier, our questionnaires are tailored to each specific company or industry, right? So if you think about financial institutions, they do not actually have such a big environmental impact just on the can you go to the previous slide? Sorry. Yeah. So financial institutions, they don't have that much impact on the environment on their own operations, right? So where their impact actually lies is on, if you talk about climate change or emissions specifically, it's on the scope 3 emissions, right? Which is and specifically for category 15, which is investments. So if you're a bank, your lending exposures to companies, say in the oil and gas sector, it's going to count heavily towards you with regards to your finance emissions, right? So, their impact on the environment is indirect, but obviously these financial institutions, they wield a lot of influence on the companies which they finance. So that is why we require all financial institutions like banks to disclose their portfolio impact. And on the rightmost, part of the slide, for forest and water security. So this is a bit special because for the financial sector, like I said earlier, FIs, they have the impact not through their operations, but through their lending, right? So why we require all financial institutions to disclose their impact on forest and water is the same as what I explained earlier. So if you are a bank and you lend to say a timber company, then you as a bank need to disclose your impact on forests through these loan exposures to these timber companies, or companies operating in the agriculture or forestry sectors, right? Likewise, if you're a bank which lends to say a textile companies, then you will need to disclose your impact on water security through through your loan exposures to these textile companies. So I hope that's clear enough. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about why companies need to disclose their environmental information. Next slide, please. So I think as Sudan has mentioned just now, one of the key trends worldwide is everyone is starting to become aware of climate change, and it's getting all plastered over the media, climate change, emissions, and consequently pollution as well. But I think a key reason why companies disclose is that by disclosing they are demonstrating action, right? So they're actually taking actions to manage their environmental impact, and the consequence of this is that they get to boost their reputation, right? So if you look at our scores that we provide to companies, by progressing up that ladder that I showed earlier, you are showing that you are actually taking action, taking steps to becoming better and to reducing your impact on the environment. The next key reason is to get ahead of regulation, right? So I think 23 years ago, there wasn't a specific standard on environmental disclosure, but now even before the ISSB was founded, I think there were a few standards that were in the market, and now with ISSB, it seems like worldwide, most regulators will start to align their mandatory disclosure regimes with the ISSB standards, right? So if you remember what I mentioned earlier, the ISSB framework is actually based heavily on the TCFD framework, right? And by disclosing to CDP, you have a head start with regards to environmental disclosure, because then you actually learn about what makes a good environmental disclosure or environmental report. And by doing so, you'll be more prepared. If one day the regulator in your country, or in Indonesia, starts implementing disclosure standards, for example, aligning to ISSB. The next reason will be boosting competitive advantage. So, from our data, we found that 95% of buyers or large purchasers, they say that they are starting to use environmental metrics, including CDP data, within their procurement processes, right? So if you are like a supplier based in Indonesia, it would be beneficial if you start learning how to do environmental disclosure, because one day your client overseas, for example, will require you to do so, because they would need that data to inform their procurement decisions. Next slide, please. So I think a key benefit of a disclosure will be also to identify risks and opportunities. And if you look at the large numbers on the right here, based on the responses that we've collected in 2022, we found that companies have identified potential financial impacts from climate risk totaling up to almost $1 trillion, right? And if you look at the bottom part, I think these same companies, they also identified potential climate opportunities amounting $2.1 trillion, right? So if you're a company, I think it will pay for you to start disclosing and identifying your risks and opportunities, because as we can see here, the amount of opportunities is double that of the potential risk that you will face in the future. And last but not least, because we provide a system for companies to disclose their environmental data, investors can also track the progress of their portfolio companies, and likewise, purchasing companies can also track the progress of their suppliers. Because we also provide a score as a company, if you disclose to CDP, you can also benchmark your progress against your peers. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the previous two slides, I've been talking about the impact on the companies themselves, right? On their value creation. But in this slide, I would talk a little bit about the impact actually on the environment, or maybe on the societal impact. Because if you talk about environmental impact, there is two sides to the coin. They call it double materiality, right? So there's the impact to you as a company, and there's also the impact to the environment, right? So what I'm trying to say in this slide is that there were a few research papers that were done, and they showed that disclosure actually leads to tangible emissions reduction, right? So from the left, there's a recent paper by authors from the ISSE Business School and San Diego State University, showing that investor demand for climate-related information, specifically through CDP disclosure, it results in greater corporate disclosure and subsequently lower carbon emissions from these companies, right? So on the right is an earlier paper by authors from the French Central Bank, and they also show this, the role of disclosure through a quasi-natural experiment via a French law that mandates climate disclosure in 2016, right? So the result of that paper was that institutional investors, they reduced their financing of fossil fuel companies compared to other European investors, precisely due to that disclosure requirement in France. Next slide, please. So I think Sudan has explained quite a bit on IFRS S1 and S2. So I'm not going to go too much into details on these two standards. But I can give a little bit of background on what is the link between CDP and ISSB, right? So ISSB they were announced by the IFRS Foundation in November 2021, and I think they were intended as a sister board to the IASB, which we are not unfamiliar to, which is the International Accounting Standards Board, which sets all your accounting standards. And the ISSB's main objective was to develop a global baseline of sustainability disclosures. So the standards was actually built on earlier work of other reporting initiatives, such as the VRF, or Value Reporting Foundation, and also the Climate Disclosure Standards Board, CDSB. So CDSB was actually hosted by CDP since its inception. And now both CDSB and VRF are both consolidated, into ISSB. And TCFD, the standards body that I mentioned earlier, their monitoring duties have also been recently taken over by the IFRS Foundation. So you can see that the standards, these reporting standards worldwide are slowly coalescing into one single standard for all companies. And I think this is also the reason why CDP, we also have a global director sitting in the technical reference group of ISSB to provide input on its development going forward. So this slide actually shows the announcement of CDP's alignment with the ISSB S2 standard. And on the picture on the right shows our Chief Impact Officer, Nikki Bartlett, with the Chair of ISSB, Emmanuel Faber, during COP27, announcing the news of our alignment with ISSB. And with this being said, from next year, all companies that disclose to CDP will be asked to disclose against the ISSB's climate standard, with the hope that we can provide ISSB aligned data to investors, policymakers, and regulators. Next slide, please. So what does CDP's incorporation of the ISSB standards actually mean? So if you remember my previous slide, we have more than 18,000 companies worldwide disclosing, right? So we are, I think the largest disclosing platform worldwide for with regards to environmental data. And by adopting the ISSB standards, it means that companies will start that disclose to CDP will also be actually indirectly or directly adopting the ISSB standards, because our platform, our questionnaire, is already aligned with the standard. And another key point here as well is on reducing reporting burden, right? Because before ISSB, I think there were quite a few reporting initiatives, and hopefully as time goes by, this all these different standards will merge and will reduce the amount of reporting work that companies need to do. So I think that the last point here is not specifically related to our incorporation of the ISSB standards, but the ISSB standards, especially IFRS S2 on the climate disclosures, it includes Scope 3 emissions, right? So for those who are not aware, Scope 3 emissions are basically indirect emissions of companies in your upstream and downstream supply chains, right? So as CDP, we think that inclusion of Scope 3 emissions in ISSB's S2 will hopefully drive more companies to disclose their Scope 3 emissions, because our data, and I think most data, shows that a lot of the emissions from large companies actually comes from their Scope 3 emissions, right? So this is where that most of the work has to be done. Next slide, please. So I hate to end on a slightly negative note, but I'm just showing here the regional emissions disclosure data from Southeast Asia specifically. And you can see that, I think a lot of companies are already disclosing their Scope 1 emissions, but less than 1/3 of all the companies in Southeast Asia are actually disclosing their Scope 3 emissions, right? So, hopefully as time goes by, as more companies adopt, the ISSB standards or start disclosing to CDP, they can start disclosing their Scope 3 emissions as well. Next slide, please. So yeah, I think that is all that I'm presenting for today. Back to you, Samintang.
All right. Thanks you so much, Mr. Stephen, for your remarkable presentation today. And I will try to highlight 3 key points too from your presentation. So the first one is CDP also a frontline to secure a triple bottom line of sustainability and related to the climate change, water, and so forth. And the second one is disclosure has a lot of benefit, include demonstrate action, boost reputation, and also to identify risk and opportunity, track, and also benchmark. And the last one, CDPs also incorporate with ISSB climate standard to accelerate early adoption of ISSB and also access to the corporate environmental info and inclusion of Scope 3 emission as well. All right, thank you so much, sir, for your presentation. And we will going to the final session. The third session will be led by Ms. Vera Yulianingsi as the Junior Manager of Standards and Professional Practices at Institute of Indonesia Chartered Accountant. And she will sharing insight on the progress and best practices of sustainability in Indonesia. So Ms. Vera, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Okay, the screen. Okay, first of all, thank you for all being here today. My name is Perilia Ningsi. After we listen to the presentation from the first and second speaker, the third theme for today is specific to the EAI as a PAO, Professional Accountant Organization, in responding to the sustainability reporting development recently. Okay, next slide. Okay, as Sam mentioned earlier, my work is assisting the Financial Accounting Standard Board and TFCCR in standard setting process and so on. So I have to say a disclaimer before I present my presentation. The view expressed in this presentation are those of the presenter, which is mine, so it's not necessarily those of the IAI. This presentation is prepared as a material for discussion of related issues and does not represent IAI's or Financial Accounting Standard Board or TFCCR position on this issue. The position of the IAI is only determined after going through due process procedure and discussion process as required by IAI. Okay, now that been done, okay, next. Yeah, first of all, this is the most frequent question asked to me, like, why accountancy profession must lead? Why it have to be us? Because if we heard a sentence referring to the sustainability, ESG, we always thought that, oh, this is the engineering's job to do it. This is not accountants. Why we have to lead? Why we have to do this? Okay, so this is an article published by IFAC. This is a good point that they pointed out that accountants first are at the center of information. So we are in a unique position to capture, analyze, report on, and assure sustainability information. We also have the relevant skills and competencies in understanding a company business, risk opportunity, and the ability to collaborate with experts. Maybe I can mention some example from the PSAK 24 or IS 19. The standard is about the benefit, employee benefit. We have to work together with actuarials to provide numbers to disclose on the financial report. So we have, I'm sorry. Okay, so we have the skills and we have the experience to collaborate with other experts, as mentioned in the example, as in the employee benefit accounting standard. And also, accountants are globally connected, as proven by today. We have our first speaker from CIMA, and from the CDP is an international organization. This is a proof that we have a globally connected network, so we can meet the needs of global capital market, global clients, and global supply chain. And assurance services, based on the IASB ISAE 3000 revised, applied by the professional accountants, enhance credibility and trust in sustainability disclosure. High quality sustainability assurance should be mandatory. And as lately, there's an exposure draft on SI 5000. Yeah. And also, accountants are subject to an ethical code, public oversight, and charged with acting in the public interest. As we all know, IAI also have a specific ethical code to be complied by all of the accountants. So the next question is how we can lead, how we can participate in this sustainability issue. The first one is advocate for smart policy and regulation. So in the next slide, I will show you how IAI do the exact that things. But before we go to the next slide, we can go back to the slide before, please. Yeah. Okay, so for the advocate for smart policy and regulation, I can explain the details later. So the next thing is demonstrate sustainability-related skill and competencies. So we have to show that even though we are not specifically trained to be an engineer in a sustainability, but we can learn the basic and we can understand what is climate-related risk, what is physical risk, what is transition risk, and what is GHG scope and which one we should report on. So that's something that we have to learn as an accountant to report. That's lead us to the next point, which is be proactive on climate reporting. As we listen today from the first speaker and the second speaker, reporting disclosure is a huge items to be done by entities because the investor now demand transparency. So climate reporting is something we have to be proactive on. And the last thing is champion an integrated mindset. We have now shifted from the profit-oriented only to the integrated mindset that we have to achieve profitability with ensuring the sustainability are in place. So it's not a choice anymore between one or the other, but we have to do both. We have to champion an integrated mindset. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, the next, this is contribution from IFAC strategy to several SDG. As you know, maybe I have to explain a little bit. IFAC is an international professional accountant organization worldwide, and III is one of the co-founder. So they have identified some of the SDG Sustainable Development Goals point that relate to the accountancy. So if you previously before this event maybe thought that what accountancy or what accountant have to do with SDG, you can answer by this slide. The first one is we have to advance the accountancy education focus on sustainability, integrity, and ethics, technology, and public sector. We can promote the attractiveness of the profession. We have to advocate for policy and regulatory decisions aligning the profession with the needs of the publics. And we can reduce inequality influence by policy decision, responding to the crisis, anti-corruption, and enabling sustainability and net zero. We can also lead in sustainability and value creation through the reporting. We can also advocate for enhanced role for the profession in sustainability and climate action. We also can participate in developing and implement comprehensive action plan for fighting corruption and economic crime. We also finally can work together in a partnership with multilateral institutions to support the development of a resilient profession and sustainable organization of financial markets and economics. Next slide, please. Okay, so all of that explanation lead to this moment. Task Force Comprehensive Corporate Reporting II establishment. So in the month of September 2020, the group of 5, the IIRC, the GRI, SASB, CDP, and CDSB issued a paper titled Statement of Intent to Work Together Toward Comprehensive Corporate Reporting. In the paper, they are trying to create one reporting for all, so they are no longer fragmented and diverse framework or standard in sustainability disclosure. And then in the same month, even in the same date, IFAC also issued proposal enhancing corporate reporting the way forward. And then a few days later, IFRS Foundation also issued a consultation paper on sustainability reporting. So based on those development in the sustainability environment, I decided to take a lead, to take a chance in establishing Task Force Comprehensive Corporate Reporting. So some of our major activities are reviewing and submit responses to the documents issued by the IFRS Foundation related to the sustainability reporting. We also conducted audiences. We also conducted meetings with regulators regarding the development of sustainability reporting closely with Financial Service Authority or OJK, central banks like Bank Indonesia, and Ministry of State-owned enterprises, Ministry of Finance, and so on. We also actively involved in various events at the international and national levels. International levels such as IFRS Global South jurisdiction discussion talking about ICSB adoption, and the national levels related to the development of sustainability reporting, both as speaker and as participant, and increase public awareness like today regarding the development of sustainability reporting through webinars and article publication. At the last slide, I'll show you the link to the publication so you can check it out yourself. Next slide, please. Yeah, okay. So the task force on CCR, when it first formed in December 2020, it only consists 8 members, which whom were representative from the DPN, DKSAK, DSAK, Financial Accounting Standard Board, and TISAK IAI. But on April 2022, we expand our membership to 20 people, so we can include our important key stakeholder in Indonesia, such as OJK, Bank Indonesia, Ministry State-Owned Enterprise (BUMN), Indonesia Stock Exchange, PPPK, Ministry of Finance, Chamber of Commerce and Industry Indonesia (Kadin), and other professional accounting organization, ya, other PAO, IAPI dan IAMI, also CFO Club. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is some of the milestone that we have been resumed for this presentation since the establishment. Sorry, since the establishment, we've been sending feedback to the IFRS Foundation and ISSB, such as request for response on the establishment of ISSB, and then consultation paper on sustainability reporting, proposal of amendment to IFRS Foundation, and the most important one is we are sending comment letter for exposure draft IFRS S1 and S2. And lately, about 2 weeks ago, we also sent the comment letter for the ISSB agenda priority consultation. And also, we are also keep increasing awareness related to the latest development in sustainability through webinars. We also actively involved in Indonesia B20 event 2022. We also have a MOU signing with Kadin Net Zero Hub. And also in last year, at the end of 2022, in our Congress, we amend the ADART to support addition to the II standard setting body, yaitu Dewan Standar Keberlanjutan or Sustainability Standard Board. So currently we are in the selection process for the chair and the member of the DSK, and when the board are established, we are continuing with the analysis and to which we will adopt the ISSB standard. Next slide. Yeah, this is a more detailed explanation about the milestone previously I mentioned. This is the signing of the MOU with Kadin. The MOU is about strengthening information transparency related to the sustainability disclosure standard through the improvement of financial and tax reporting. And this is the example of providing advocating for smart policy and regulation. IAI through the B20 has provided 4 strategic recommendations to the G20, where TFCCR is very actively involved in drafting those recommendations and policy action through its membership in the B20 Task Force Integrity and Compliance. What is the policy recommendation? I'll give you a bit highlight in the next slide, please. Yeah, so this is the example of what we've been doing in advocating for policy recommendation in sustainability reporting. Is on the first recommendation, we promote sustainable governance in business to support ESG initiative. We promote for standardized approach and measure, compliant effort, effective monitoring, and independent assurance toward implementation of sustainable governance. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the most notable policy recommendation that we keep advocating to push through the B20 2022. Policy action 1.2, optimize sustainable governance, compliance, disclosure, and monitoring. Ongoing effort on integrating and standardizing sustainable governance by promoting and accelerating the adoption of a high-quality, globally converged, and accepted sustainability reporting standard. We decide that we cannot specifically explicitly mentioning ISSB, but we use the high quality, globally converged, and accepted sustainability reporting standard, and maximizing sustainable governance, compliance monitoring, and independent assurance initiative. Next slide, please. Yeah, so maybe it's not directly related to our policy recommendation, but we just want to highlight that the ISSB is already mentioned in the G20 Bali Leaders Declaration in 15-16 November 2022. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is also some of the comment letters that we sent, TFCCR sent to the ISSB. Why I want to highlight this point, because this is an important part of the ISSB standard. They provide connectivity between financial reporting and sustainability disclosure. In their request for information document, which we later send the comment on, they ask which project should focus on. We want to emphasize that we propose so that the board form a formal task force encompassing members from both the ISB and ISSB, so they can work more focused on integrating financial reporting and sustainability disclosure information. You can check the complete comment on the links on your screen. https://bit.ly/IAI connectivity. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so what is next for EIE in sustainability initiative? We already conducted a recruitment process for our sustainability standard board. Now we are in the interviewing and selecting and so on. We will establish the DSK with inclusion of the relevant regulator and stakeholder. We will ensure that we include the key stakeholder in Indonesia, such as OJK, preparer, investor, and PAOs, to eventually will adopt the sustainability disclosure standard in Indonesia. We will also, IAI will also ensure its compatibility with relevant regulators and frameworks. IAI will also ensure its applicability with entities across industry in Indonesia. As we listen from our other speakers today, that are various specific industry that maybe cannot be compared one to the other because of their uniqueness in the industry. So we have to ensure that it can be applied to all across the industry in Indonesia, especially since Indonesia has distinct climate issues compared to the Western Hemisphere jurisdiction. IAI will also work with various relevant stakeholders to encourage the role of important parties, such as regulators, preparers, academicians, practitioners in the standard setting process. And then IAI will continue working together with relevant stakeholders to actively involve to be the voice of Indonesia at ISSB. As I mentioned an example earlier, that we propose that the ISSB should focus on integrating financial reporting and sustainability disclosure. It's one of the examples that voicing our concern to the ISSB. We also will continue to raising awareness about the latest development in sustainability standard through capacity building, seminar or webinar like today, and continuing professional development or CPD activities. Okay, next slide. Yeah, this is the publication that the FCCR has published. You can check the publication on the link on your screen. Currently, there are seven publications. We will produce more as the times goes by. Okay, next slide. Okay, that was my last slide. Thank you. I give back the screen to Sam. Thank you, Sam.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Vera, for your outstanding presentation. And allow me to offer a brief, a little bit recap for your presentation before. So we realized that accountant plays a strategic role because accountant as the center of information have relevant skill and competencies as well, and globally connected, and also subject to an ethical code. And also it is in line with the IFAC strategy to contribute to the sustainable development goal, especially in point 4, 5, 8, 10, until to the 17th goal. And the other one is Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia, or Institute of Chartered Accountant, has several strategies for the future to maintain the sustainability, including establish Dewan Standar Keberlanjutan with inclusion of relevant regulator, ensure its compatibility with relevant regulation, and the other one. And the last but not the least, for all the participants, if you want to explore or learn more about TFCCR publication, you can also visit the link on the presentation before. All right, so we have heard some great presentation today from our speaker, and now it's time to hear from all of participants, and feel free to ask any question regarding the presentation before, and our speaker will be here to respond to your question. But let me try to check the question on the Zoom for the first one, and then we will try to start this first session for the Q&A session with 3 questions. So, all right, let me check the first one. All right, so the first question from Audi Kasbara, it will be delivered to me, Mr. Sudan. So the question is, current practice of nowadays audit procedure are risk-based audit, and there are disclosure regarding various risks in the accompanying notes to the audit financial statement. So what sort of risk management that remain left in unaccounted for that are aimed at fulfilling sustainability disclosure? So Mr. Sudan, time is yours.
Yeah, if you could, can you please ask that question again, or if you can post it here? So
Oh,
that
sure.
might be easier.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Wait a minute. Okay. All right. I have sent the question.
All right. So the question is, current practice nowadays. Wait a minute. The current practice nowadays is audit procedures are risk-based audits, and there are disclosures regarding various risks in the accompanying notes of audited financial statements. So what sort of risk management that remain left unaccounted for that there are aimed at fulfilling sustainability disclosure? So, I mean, if you really go back into the risk management disclosures, right? So organizations, and especially financial institutions, are expected to have very detailed risk management disclosures, starting from various kind of risk, exchange rate risk, fair value risk, commodity price risk, and interest rate risk. So various kind of risks. So the question really about is sustainability risks. So I would definitely think organizations, as part of their risk appetite statements, they need to definitely bring in their risk appetite and define the risk appetite relating to sustainability issues, starting from climate risks and any other kind of issues like gender education or equality related treatments. Organizations need to bring them part of their risk appetite statement, and as part of their risk management disclosure, they also need to talk about what are those metrics, frameworks, and how the organization is identifying, monitoring, and reporting these risks and opportunities. And also, as the question pointed out very clearly, when auditors do an audit, right, so it is also important that there would be an audit on your sustainability risk disclosures as well. So because that forms part of your overall risk management. So auditors have a responsibility to ensure that organizations correctly disclose the climate-related disclosures as part of IFRS S1 and S2. And if organizations are claiming compliance with IFRS S1 and S2, it is very important that they get independently audited and auditors give an opinion about that. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, sir, for your answer for the question before. So we are moving to the other question, but this is delivered to Mr. Steven. The question is from Muhammad Aristo. So the question is, how is the reliability and integrity of the data obtained from the questionnaire? What if the company just answer casually? So, Mr. Steven, time is yours.
Yep, thank you. So I think there are three parts to this question. So CDP, we are a voluntary disclosure platform, right? As opposed to a mandatory disclosure regulation by the government. So, companies disclose to us voluntarily. And I think to answer your question on, what if a company just answers casually, right? So, we actually have a specific module that's related to verification, right? So if you have your, say, if you answer the climate change questionnaire, if you have your emissions verified, then, you will actually get additional points for that, right? So, and besides that, we actually encourage companies, to have their, verifications done for their emissions. Because to be in our A list, right, I think there's a specific criteria that companies need to achieve, right? I think they need to achieve about 70% of their emissions to be verified. And another point is that, companies, they are in the A list, meaning that you are showing the best practice with regards to disclosure, environmental impact. You need to make your responses public, right? So by making your responses public, I think, it will be there for the world to see if you are actually greenwashing or not, right? So that is a mechanism by which, I think the public can help, companies be accountable. Because, if you want to be in the A list, essentially, people need to see what you are actually responding, and, they can, figure out for themselves. So yeah, that's my answer.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Stephen, for your amazing answer. So the next question will be referred to Ms. Pera. So the question is, how can universities as formal institutions play a pivotal role in shaping their curriculum to align with the era of sustainability disclosure, ensuring that their accounting graduates possess the necessary skill and knowledge to contribute effectively, thereby creating a positive domino effect on the practice of sustainability disclosure as a whole. So, Ms. Vera, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Sam, for the question. You can hear my sound okay?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, I think of course the university play a crucial role in the development of the young bright minds. But I think the most important part is to keep the lecturer updated on the information, because as we know, the ISSB have been established in 2021 on UN COP26, while the first consultation paper published by IFRS Foundation only a year before. So the development is very dynamic and very fast. So the lecturer need to keep up with the updates on the standard or the newest development such as CDP, which will including the ISSB on the CDP questionnaire later on 2024. So because I heard in some university that the materials, that the lecture material on the sustainability accounting or sustainability standard is focusing only on GRI. I think university should look into another like TCFD and CDP, which is, I just found out that this is like the largest platform on the climate disclosure. So I think this is a very important to university to also update and expand their horizon on the sustainability framework and standard, not only on GRI. Okay, thank you. Maybe others wanna add on?
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Pera, for your answer. So the key point is a university should adjust with the newest updating sustainability published by the ISB also, because according to me, just a little bit sharing with all the participants, the most important thing and the most challenges that we face as accounting student is we just learn based on our concentration. Like me, I just learned about Islamic finance, but I just learned a little bit about the sustainability in the university, because we don't have a specific and curriculum about the sustainability accounting. And I think every university should apply this one to make the curriculum is up to date and in line with the newest issue in Indonesia, especially to the climate change and sustainability. So thank you so much, Ms. Vera, for your answer. So we will moving to the next question for Mr. Sudan again. So the question is from Kalianusa_Nova. So the question is how to measure internal credit carbon as described in the slide before. So Mr. Sudan, time is yours.
I think that question is for Stephen, if I'm not mistaken. That's from the presentation from Stephen, I guess.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
So, okay, sir. So I will moving the question to Mr. Stephen regarding to the internal carbon credit and how to measure the internal carbon credit as mentioned before on this slide.
Thank you, Samintang. I think the question is I'm not exactly sure what the question is asking, because I think we have what we call an internal carbon price, and I think that is one of the tools that companies use to set a carbon price for themselves internally, and I think that is that can help them to achieve carbon reductions in their operations internally. But we do have if you check our website, I think we have lots of responses. I think we have a list of our A-listers, and by searching for these names in our website, you can actually see their responses and how these large companies at the forefront of environmental stewardship are actually setting internal carbon prices, and there are actually quite a few tools, a few mechanisms that they use. So I would encourage you to actually access our websites and check for yourselves. But yeah.
All right, thank you, sir, for your answer. And the next question, it is for Mr. Stephen too, related to the climate-related disclosure impact on carbon reduction. So how would this disclosure impact on carbon emission? Is it possible that the carbon reduction is caused by carbon price or other carbon reduction regulation from the government?
Yeah, so I think for this question, carbon price here relates to carbon tax, if I'm not mistaken. So, in CDP, to answer the first part of the question, in CDP, we often say you can only manage what you can measure, right? So, by disclosing your emissions, and by, of course, calculating your emissions, the next step would be then to actually take actions to reduce those emissions, right? But the first step that you need to do is to start calculating and disclosing them, right? So, that's to answer the first part. And for the second part, I think it's asking whether government regulations are essentially effective to help reduce carbon emissions in companies. I think the Indonesian government specifically, they've released quite a few regulations on disclosures such as POJK 51, and also they've also released incentives, I believe, for like renewable energy vehicle producers as well. But I think in the private sector, we can't wait for the government to start implementing their regulations before moving, right? Because one of the points that I mentioned in my slide is to get ahead of regulation, right? So as the private sector, you need to take the lead. Companies need to take the lead. They need to start disclosing. They need to start calculating the emissions. They need to start setting targets to reduce those emissions before even the government implements their regulations. Because if so this is to prepare before regulations actually hit. Yeah. So you are sufficiently protected from this transition risk, so to speak. But yeah, that's my answer. Thank you.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Just to add my views on the question, thanks, Stephen, for answering. Especially the first part of the question is very, very important, in the sense that when companies start to report their carbon emissions and sustainability disclosures, then only organizations will take them seriously, because we want to really make these disclosures discussed at the boardrooms in organizations, and that is when these disclosures will be taken very seriously, just like how companies are measuring their profit margins, their return on capital employed, their risk indicator seriously, they need to start measuring the impact of their operation on the environment as well. So for them to start doing that, they need to make it as part of their annual report, as reported. So they take it seriously because they want to improve it. It all based on the fact that what gets measured gets reported and that gets improved, isn't it?
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Stephen and Mr. Sudan, for your comprehensive answer. So it is in line with the previous material that Mr. Sudan mentioned before. So the other question that I have seen on the YouTube channel and the YouTube of EIE. So the question is, how can organization navigate the inherent complexities and challenges associated with implementing IFRS S1 and S2?
I think the major challenges are going to be number one, the technology challenges, and number two, getting the right advice. So I highly recommend organizations to reach out to the right technology provider, invest on the technology, because the data should be, very clean and reliable. So organizations need to invest on the technology and reach out to the right person for consultancy support, because at the end of the day, this is a new area, the ESG reporting and climate risk reporting. So the accountants needs to be trained, and then it will take a lot of time. So I definitely think in order to avoid the complexity, so organizations reach out and seek external support if internal capabilities are not there. And reaching out to the right people at the right time is very important.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for your answer. So I think I have delivered all the question on Zoom and also on the YouTube channel. And as we reach the conclusion of today's session, I also invite 3 speakers to share their closing statement, also advice for young people, especially aspiring accountant, to become a catalyst for sustainability. So for the closing statement, I will start with Mr. Sudan, followed by Mr. Stephen, and then Ms. Pera.
So I highly recommend all accountants to take sustainability disclosure seriously. And if you are a CFO or working for a CFO, I think CFO should have to persuade the senior management and board to be more committed and involved in sustainability related disclosures. Take it to something that's discussed at the boardroom, not something that gets reported only in your as part of your annual reports, but also taken seriously. So accountants have a role to persuade the rest of the people in the organizations to become more committed to sustainability and sustainability reporting. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir, for your closing remark. And the next one is Mr. Stephen.
Thanks, Amitang. So I think for my closing remark, I would say that, I realize I'm in a room full of, virtually full of accountants here, but back when I was in college, accounting wasn't the sexiest profession. But I think, with at this age of climate change, right? I think accountants, especially young accountants like yourselves, you have a major role to play. And I think you are sitting at the edge of the, you are istilahnya ujung tombak, yeah. So you have a key role to play to make sure that companies actually represent disclose their environmental impact accurately. And I think if you just Google greenwashing, you can see like so many fines and companies that are actually misrepresenting their information. So I think you guys are in a very good place, and keep learning about sustainability. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, Stephen. And the next one, Ms. Pera.
Okay, sorry. I want to follow up on Mr. Stephen's remarks about accounting is not a sexy profession, because I kind of want to pile on that. So for young for young audience who are accounting student don't like because I was in that position and always thought like there's an AI and there are like automatization, so like are we still relevant? Because so this is the exact time for us to shine with the new challenges we have to face head on. The climate change, we have to take part. This is it, we can take part in the becoming a beacon of hope. A beacon of hope. We can provide information to the CFOs like Mr. Sudan said, and we can champion an integrated mindset. So it's not we have to choose one or the other between profit or sustainable business. So we have to keep on going and keep learning about the sustainability disclosure, and we can be the one who change the mindset of the business profession. Thank you.
All right. Thanks in advance, Ms. Vera, for your closing remark. And as we wrap up today's enlightening session, I'd like to express my gratitude to our speaker, Mr. Sudan, Mr. Stephen, and Ms. Vera for their invaluable insight and advice on sustainability in the accounting profession. So thank you so much, sir, for your time and for your insight for all of us. And it's so beneficial for all of us, for all the participants today. So the last but not the least, I extend an invitation to all aspiring accountants to take a part in APAFest 2022. And this even offer opportunity for accounting students from all over Indonesia to engage in various activities, including APACHEM, National APA Award, webinar series, and also Reels competition. And registration remain open until October 10, 2023. And for further information, you can visit the official account of Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia on Instagram at Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia, or the website https://apafest.iaiglobal.or.id. So I'd like to turn the proceeding back to our Master of Ceremony, Ms. Monica, to formally conclude today's event and offer any closing remark. The screen is yours, Ms. Monica.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Sudan, Pak Stephen, Mbak Pera, and Sam for sharing your valuable insight with us. It was very fruitful discussion. I believe it will benefit all the aspiring accountants to prepare their future. Accountants can save the world. Thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, and for all participants, all of you will get e-certificate. We will need you to complete the survey and fill the right keywords. We have flashed the link and QR code to your screen. You just need to scan the barcode on your screen and fill the right keywords. The keywords for this session is climate-related risk. Again, the right keyword for this session is climate-related risk. After you fill the survey, we will distribute the e-certificate along with the material presented by our presenter today. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to remind you on our upcoming webinar on APAFest 2023. Since the theme for this year APAFest is redefining talent, skill, and competencies. Today we have sustainability already. Previous webinar, we have something related digital marketing already. And our next webinar will be for attitude and professionalism in the workplace. It will be on 17 October. So we would like to invite you to join this webinar. Our next webinar will be Retain Asia Pacific Accounting and Finance Talent, will be on October 30. Also, our closing ceremony of APAFest 2023 will be part of FinBiz 2030, led by Chartered Accountant Worldwide and One Young World, with the theme AI Unleash, Navigating the Future of Finance and Accounting. The event will be held in conjunction with the International Accounting Days on 10 November 2023. The event will be hybrid from Indonesian Stock Exchange main hall. Make sure you are well registered and watch the session. Ladies and gentlemen, accounting students from all around Indonesia, we're still waiting for you to join our competition. We have APA Champ, Business Competition, and National APA Award for the best students. Also, we have Reels Competition. So participate on the competition and win the grand prize. On behalf of IAI, we would like to express our gratitude to SIMA for their support. Also to our panelists, Pak Umasudan Subramaniam, Pak Stephen Gunawan, Mbak Pera Yulianingsih, and Samintang. Also to all of distinguished guests and participants, thank you for watching this session. I'm Monica Nabilia. Thank you, stay safe and stay healthy. I see you in another session. Terima kasih semua. Thank you, Pak Stephen, Pak Sudan, Samintang.
Thank you everyone.
Aplikasi IAI Lounge. Melalui aplikasi ini, Anda dapat mendaftarkan diri Anda untuk mengikuti berbagai kegiatan training, membaca SAK online, dan juga memonitor kegiatan PPL yang pernah Anda ikuti. Download aplikasi IAI Lounge di App Store atau Google Play Store. Untuk anggota IAI, silakan login menggunakan email @akuntanindonesia. Sedangkan untuk non-anggota, login menggunakan alamat email yang telah Anda daftarkan sebelumnya. Pada halaman home, terdapat berbagai menu untuk dapat dinikmati. Cek section Lounge untuk melihat event IAI, SAK Online, CAW Network, dan Affiliated Campus. Untuk cek jadwal pelatihan dan event terkini, klik menu event. Scroll untuk melihat berbagai kegiatan dan event yang dilaksanakan oleh IAI, seperti seminar, pelatihan, serta workshop. Apabila Anda telah melakukan proses pendaftaran dan telah menyelesaikan proses administrasi, silakan cek list event yang akan Anda ikuti pada menu My Event. Selanjutnya, Anda dapat membaca SAK secara online. Klik menu SAK Online untuk langsung terhubung dengan aplikasi SAK Online. Gratis untuk anggota IAI. Untuk non-anggota, silakan mendaftar untuk berlangganan. Pada menu Home, terdapat juga section keanggotaan untuk mencari informasi terkini tentang keanggotaan IAI dan ASEAN CPA. Nikmati kemudahan mengakses data akuntan profesional pemegang CA, ASEAN CPA, dan akuntan berpraktik. Selanjutnya, pada section KJA, terdapat menu Find KJA untuk mencari kantor jasa akuntan terdekat di sekitar Anda. Terdapat juga menu materi KJA untuk memperkaya pengetahuan dan kompetensi Anda. Section KJA akan memudahkan Anda untuk mendapatkan informasi lengkap dan terkini seputar kantor jasa akuntan. Terakhir, tepatnya di bagian bawah, terdapat menu berita dan publikasi yang akan mengupdate Anda dengan informasi terkini terkait perkembangan profesi akuntansi baik nasional maupun internasional, dan pastinya mengenai SAK Update. Selamat menikmati aplikasi IAI Lounge, available on App Store and Google Play Store. Journey to be a professional accountant is just one click away.
Bapak dan Ibu, sekali lagi untuk seluruh anggota IAI, kami mengundang Bapak dan Ibu untuk mendownload aplikasi IAI Lounge. Login menggunakan alamat email @akuntanindonesia.or.id. Pada aplikasi tersebut, Bapak dan Ibu dapat melihat berbagai pelatihan atau webinar yang diselenggarakan oleh IAI gratis maupun berbayar, juga berbagai publikasi yang relevan bagi Bapak dan Ibu sekalian. Bapak dan Ibu juga bisa mengakses SAK online melalui aplikasi tersebut. Jadi sekali lagi kami mengundang untuk seluruh Bapak dan Ibu yang sudah menjadi anggota
Mohon maaf. Mohon maaf, apa bisa diulangi keywordnya? Tadi nggak jelas.
segera mendownload aplikasi IAI Lounge. Baik, Bapak dan
Iya,
Ibu,
soalnya nggak jelas.
kami akan tutup ruangan ini dalam hitungan ketiga. 1, 2, 3.